Hi guys, Saturday morning and a no hat version of whatever we call it. Okay, what I've done today, I've really triaged down the amount of clips that I've done down to, I think there are 5, because I think I've got a starting to get a handle on a big picture which I can put out to you. I've had to throw away an awful lot of stuff that I would like to tell you about, especially about why the IMF is being used by the European people to help in their banking crisis, and it's all to do with collateral. But we just don't have time to go into that today, and I don't think there's too much advantage of knowing it. All we can say is the ECB is panicking about it productively, like the Fed in the past has panicked productively and got things done behind the scenes. The ECB is really doing a lot of work behind the scenes, bringing in the IMF among other things. But we'll leave that for today and go with what I think is a bigger picture. Now, this is a twit pic, as you will have spotted already, life in the red zone. Now, this is from the European Commission, and it is the good guys and the bad guys when it comes to their old criteria for 3% of deficit to GDP. If you're in dark green, that means that you've got actually running a surplus. If you're in light green, that means you're under the 3%. Pink means that you're over the 3%, and dark red means that you're double over it, in other words 6% plus. And grey means that you haven't entered the euro yet. And as you can see, up to the crisis, most of the time, most of the countries were either grey, not quite into the union yet, Slovakia, Slovenia and people like that, or they were green. There were spots of red by France and especially Germany running for 5 years there, 2001 to 2005 in the red, well, what is the pink, but over the criteria for the old EU. And Spain at the bottom, you can see it's quite instructive that up till the crisis in 2008, right at the bottom, they were running light green, and in 2005, 6 and 7 they were running dark green. But this was obviously because the private sector was taking on all the debt and paying taxes on the things that the private sector were buying with their borrowings. They were basically borrowing money to buy houses, real estate of various sorts, and paying taxes on that, and the money was going into the central exchequer. But when the crisis hit, they went to pink and then dark red. Right. So we're just bearing that at the back of our minds, and one of the main reasons it was there because I like a pretty picture on the front page. And we'll go to Germany's finance minister. EMU deal will prevent need of further PSI. Now, of all the nonsense that the clowns came up with, this was a concrete thing that was important to the markets. That the German finance minister said on Friday that it is rather unlikely that beyond Greece there will be any other private sector involvement needed in the Eurozone. In other words, nobody's going bankrupt, and even if they do, the private sector won't be involved anyway. The deal struck at the EU summit in Brussels will prevent an Eurozone member state from becoming insolvent, ministry spokesman Martin Kothaus argued at a regular government press conference here. Now, I don't understand that paragraph. The 17 members of the Eurozone and 6 non-Euro area members early Friday reached an agreement for an internal government treaty that will strengthen fiscal rules and excessive deficit procedure. So what we had on the first link, the green and pink and red, is beefed up. Now, what all they're really saying is, this time we're going to take it seriously. And if I read it right, what they've decided is not just 3%, but they're going to balance budgets. So you've really got to be in the green all the time, or there are going to be assorted sanctions on you. Right. So, accepting the fact that countries are not going to go bankrupt because Sarkozy says so, but what if they do? Now, what they've said is the PSI will not apply. There won't be private sector involvement. So who would pay if there was a problem? At the moment it's the EFSF, which is not funded because they really can't get that off the ground. That's been a bit of a damp squib. That was to sell bonds into the market backed up by the Euro governments. They've moved forward the ESM, which was meant to take over from the EFSF, and will now take over from the EFSF, but earlier, probably in the middle of 2012. The ESM is rather different, again, if I've got it right. It's all too many facts to get into a little head. The ESM will be real money put up by the governments. I don't think it's a bond fudge. It's actually governments have to write a cheque and put it into the ESM. And it will be the ESM that will pay up bailout if bailouts have to be done to stop bankruptcies and any defaulting on government bonds. So the governments will have to pay. So not only will they have to bring back their budget deficits from France, which was 7.1 down to, I think optimistically they think it's going to be about 6 at the end of this year, bring that 6 down to 0, then on top of that they've got to pay into the ESM, and if that ESM money is not enough for any bailout, bankruptcies, defaults that countries in the Eurozone have to do, then they have to pay more out of their exchequer into the central ESM to pay for the bankruptcies. In other words, government spending in the Eurozone is going to be squeezed absolutely. Now, what I believe we've got here, and I'm turning to Michael Hudson because Michael Hudson is respected by one or two people, but quite frankly he done half go on a bit. But I'll read you this opening paragraph and a bit that he had published in Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. The easiest way to understand Europe's financial crisis is to look at the solutions being proposed to resolve it. They are a banker's dream, a grab bag of giveaways that few voters would be likely to approve in a democratic referendum. Bank strategists learned not to risk submitting their plans to democratic vote after the Icelanders twice refused in 2010-11 to approve their government's capitulation to pay Britain and the Netherlands for losses run up by badly regulated Icelandic banks operating abroad. Lacking such a referendum, mass demonstrations were the only way Greek voters to register their opposition to the... He does go on a bit, doesn't he? I'll go to the second paragraph. The problem is that Greece lacks the ready money to redeem its debts and pay the interest charges. The ECB is demanding that it sell off public assets, land, water, sewer systems, ports and other assets to the public domain, and also cut back on pensions and other payments to its population, and then goes on about the bottom 99% understandably are not happy. What we have, I think, is a capitulation, a realization. Neither of those work quite right. It's an understanding, I think, by what where the socialist governments of Europe, understanding that their system has failed. Now, I don't think, personally, that any of those socialist type government officials at that meeting knew what they were doing in this, but what they have done is to sign up for what is called here a banker's dream. But you can imagine what's happening. They got to shrink down their government deficits to 0 and have some in reserve to bail out other friends that aren't doing so well. And when push comes to shove and they have to get extra money together, Where are they going to get are they going to get that extra money from? Cutting down on benefits for this, that and the other, because they're socialist governments, and doing the old sell off of public assets, land, water, sewer systems, ports and other assets in the public domain, cut back on pensions and other payments to its population. It's as though the world has had the Reagan-Thatcher revolution, but there were 26 countries in Europe that didn't go along with this, but went with the European socialist-ish way of doing things. But as a bulk load, 26 European countries have just come aboard the Reagan-Thatcher revolution. They don't know it yet. I don't believe they even know it yet. But that is inevitably where they must go, because they will have to raise money somewhere to keep the rioters off the streets. And what they'll have to do is to sell off public assets, land, water, sewer systems, ports and other assets. But, I hope that wasn't too loud, it could have been loud, too loud that, but there is a problem. Do I come to it later? Let's go on to this and see how we go. This is from the UK Guardian. Over 55 struggle as savings and income levels plunge. Savings for older people have fallen by more than 25% over the past year, while incomes have dropped by 4%. Now, nothing that I haven't been saying over and over again, but this is the result of the Thatcher-Reagan revolution. This is what you get. Now, I'm not saying that there is another way, or there could have been another way, but I'm just saying that when you go to your Thatcher-Reagan revolution, this is what you get. Ladies like that, in her, I don't know, is that Morrison's green coat? Supermarket, on her knees, aged what, should we say 70? On her knees stacking shelves. That is what you get. And that is what Europe's new 26 members have got to look forward to. Or not. Let's finish with this. It's the relative labour market policy spending 1998 to 2008. Now, these are OECD countries. I'll read the note on the bottom. The bars represent the average annual labour market policy spending as a percentage of GDP between 1998 and 2008, divided into active and passive policy spending for the 20 OECD countries studied in the article. Okay, plus the United States. Now, active labour market policies are training programs, etc. Passive ones are paying out to people that are unemployed, a dole, that sort of thing. So active is training people up and giving them advice to get them into the labour market, and the grey bars are passive ones where they're paid while they're out of work. Denmark at the top, a classic European country. Sweden, Belgium, Netherlands, France, Germany, Finland, Spain, Norway, Switzerland, Italy, Portugal, Austria, all those with great sticky out amounts of active and passive relative labour market policy spending. Get to the bottom and okay, fifth up is Greece, and you'd think, well, Greece would be up at the top. Greece is a very, very strange country. It's mainly that they didn't get the tax income in as opposed to it spending it out. And the fact that they didn't need active or passive labour policy spending because they just employed everybody. If in doubt, they'd just employ them and then forget to get the tax money in. That's why Greece's number is low, with Hungary, Poland above them, who are just getting that sort of system going. Below them, the Slovak Republic, the same. But underneath, and the Czech Republic, sandwiched in between the United States and the United Kingdom, who have done this Reagan-Thatcher revolution. What we've got here is that those bars in the future at the top there are all going to get crushed in. They're going to go this way, aren't they? They're going to get crushed in like this. All as far down towards the United Kingdom and the United States as possible. This way, the Eurozone, the European Union, and everyone on this chart can start competing, or can get to be competing with the East. They've given up the idea that they can get the high value jobs. They've realized that they just can't win that game, and what must happen is that the population must be crushed downwards. And perhaps it is the only real rational realization for this globalization, that in globalization you can't drag the Asians up and you get ahead. What happens is you must go down and compete against them. And that's now what the 26 members of Europe have signed up to. And the United States and the United Kingdom are ahead and will continue to get on with the magnificent cultural and social experiment of trying to compete with China. And anyone that thinks it's going to end well must have very strange brain cells. Good luck to the OECD West. They are going to need it. Bye.